Hello, this is James Taylor from Therapy Business School. I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. In this video, I want to talk about how to start off a therapy session, either brand new or with an ongoing or existing client. I also want to talk about psychological stroking and explain what that means as well. So, let's get into it. For those that don't know, I'm a counsellor, a hypnotherapist and a life coach in the UK, and I now work solely online, seeing clients all over the world with the help of Zoom. Now, how do I start therapy sessions? Well, let's speak about this for a little bit. There's a few ways of doing it, but first I want to talk about psychological stroking, alright? Sounds a bit wrong, but here is what it is. You know when you have bumped into a neighbour and you might say to the neighbour, "How are you? How are you getting on?" You've just given them a psychological stroke. Now really, what should happen if things work out correctly is after the neighbour has finished saying how they are, they should say to you, "How are you getting on?" Now they've returned the psychological stroke to you. Now you may go for another psychological stroke. "Oh, I've been doing this. Tell me, how is that thing getting on with whatever it might be," right? Now they reply to the second psychological stroke and they may say, "Actually, have you booked a holiday this year or anything?" What, it could be anything. They return the psychological stroke. After a certain amount of time, the psychological stroking has been accepted, delivered, and everyone's happy, and then you go about your separate way, both feeling satisfied. Okay? I don't know whether you've ever experienced this, where you've given out a psychological stroke and it hasn't been returned. You experienced that? Where you said to someone, "How are you?" And they say, "Fine, yeah, fine." And then they blank you completely. It's not a nice feeling. I've experienced that. So when clients come to a session, there's a little bit of psychological stroking going on. So they may sit down in the chair and you may say, "How are you?" Or, "It's nice to see you again." And they say, "Yeah, it's nice to see you too." There's a psychological stroke. Now, "Okay, how are you?" "I'm good, how are you?" There's another psychological stroke. After a certain amount of time, you as the therapist need to lead the session. So here's a few ways of doing it. Now, if it's an ongoing client, they'll get used to your pattern and they'll get used to normally sitting down and just starting to offload and say what's on the mind, because they'll learn and be guided from you. With a new client, they may have to get used to your pattern of how you work, and also you're going to have to get used to theirs as well. So here's a few things that you can do. The client sits in the chair. I'm going to imagine you're the client and I'm the therapist for this example, and I might say, "Where would you like to begin today?" And I'll go quiet. Now the reason I'll go quiet is because the client might have an idea of something they want to talk about, or they haven't considered it, and then they're going to weigh up what do they want to talk about. So, "Where would you like to start today?" Now a client might say, "Well, I don't know." That's okay. Anywhere you like, take your time. Now a thing that you can do is, if depending on your memory or if you've looked at your case notes, you can recall or remind a client of something you were talking about in the last session. If they are really stuck and don't know where to start, you can say, "Well, last time we were speaking about X, Y, and Z. Did you want to talk about that, or was there something else?" You're always given the alternative of something else. You see, it's their agenda, it's not yours. You're there to guide and to coax, but you do not want to be leading by telling the client what the session is going to be about. That's a huge no. And if you might be doing this accidentally, I'd like to think if you were aware of it, you'd have stopped that by now. But if you find that you are directing the session, such as the client comes in, sits down and you say, "Right, okay, well, let's carry on from where we were last week. You were speaking about you were having this difficult relation." No, that's a big no. "What would you like to talk about today?" Or, "Where are you today? How are you feeling today? How have things been since our last session? How have you been?" I remember last time in our last session, we spoke about a few things. How have things been since then? See, you're inquiring, you're putting You're putting the feelers out to see if the client wants to talk about it. Now, of course, they don't have to talk about just one thing and stay with that thing the entire session. They might give you alternatives. Well, I want to speak about, I had an argument with my partner and my boss and work is driving me insane. So now they're giving you two. So how do you deal with that? Really, really easy. Okay, so you echo and you summarise, and I should do a video on echo and summarising actually. But you echo and summarise. Okay, so you've had a word with your partner. Sorry, I'm thinking about the next video I'm going to make. So then you could say, okay, so you've had an argument with your partner, and you also mentioned that your boss is driving you insane. So you use the same verbiage. So you mentioned that your boss is driving you insane. Which one of those two would you like to talk about? Or is there something else that you'd like to discuss? Go quiet. There's a lot of going quiet in therapy where you may say something and the client hears it. It's got to process it. So don't feel the need to fill in the gap of the silence, because really, you could really break the flow of a client's thought pattern. Now, another thing you can do is, if this thought pattern is happening and you can see it's happening with the client, their eyes are darting all over the place and you're just waiting patiently, the client can then end that thought pattern and just look at you and say nothing. So then it's okay to say, look like you were in deep thought there. Would it be okay to tell me what you were thinking about? Would it be okay to not tell me? And not, you were in deep thought. It looked like you were in deep thought there. Would it be okay to tell me what you were thinking about? And then go quiet. So there's loads of different ways to start the session. Now, if it's a first client on a first session, there's going to be admin to go through. There's going to be the rules of confidentiality, your contract. There's going to be, maybe if you're working in person, what happens if the fire alarm goes off in the building that you're in? What happens if there's an emergency? Where the toilets are? These kind of things. So it's good to get the admin out of the way. So the way I deal with that, when I was working face to face, I would say to clients, okay, can we just go through the admin first of all before we get started on the reason that you're here? No one ever said no. Okay, the toilet's just outside. If you need me, I'm here. Here's my card. Here's my number. If you need to get in touch so-and-so, here's a leaflet. You're providing information. You're not bombarding them, but you're just setting the ground rules. And then you speak about the confidentiality and the contract. Also clarifying what they'd like to get out of the therapy session or sessions, what their goals are, what they want to achieve, what do they want to gain, what do they want to let go of. So the first session is more a question and answer in some ways, especially at the beginning. And depending on how experienced you are, that may take some time to get through, but that's okay. You'll find that this will become more natural to you the more that you do it, all right? And in the second session, when they sit down, hi, nice to see you. Nice to see you as well. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? Fine. The British are awfully polite at this kind of thing. But after a while, when they get used to you, they can sit down and I'd be, oh, that's a big sigh. How are you? Oh, I'm fed up with this one. Would you like to talk about that today, or is there something else in particular you want to talk about in the time we've got? So you can be led by the nose a little bit, by little body language cues that the clients give off. All right. So I'm gonna think about making that other video about echoing and summarizing. It's a fantastic concept. In fact, that'll be my next video. So that's my homework to myself. All right. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it the like, the share, and the subscribe. I ask this on almost every video. I do it because it tells the YouTube algorithm that this channel might be beneficial to people who are either therapists or or training to be therapists. All right. So if you haven't done so already, please do that. If you click the notification bell, every time I upload a new video, you get told automatically. Alright, so I'll see you on the next video, which will all be about echoing and summarising and paraphrasing and the power of this stuff. Alright, so this is James from Therapy Business School. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye bye.